Hello, this is my individual project. My name is Jacob Lucas, and here we go. The project that I did my case on today is case 4.35. Um, it is found on page 344 of our textbook, and it is the case of United Way. United Way background. The story for United Way begins in 1887, when religious leaders in the area first founded the charitable organization Society. This was primarily focused on helping the individuals in the society that were not as prevalent and financially stable, so they weren't able to feed themselves as much, didn't have as nice of a home. Um, the first United Way organization that planned and coordinated local services for a fundraising campaign for 22 agencies, raising $21,700, which may not sound by a lot to our standards nowadays, but that is uh, a very high quantity to be raising for a fundraising back in this time. And once you account for inflation and everything, like Coke used to be 5 cents a bottle, so things were a lot cheaper, and $21,700 is a very significant contribution. They were able to do that by incorporating a large variety of different communities and agencies, like it says there, 22 different agencies that were able to bring all of that together to form that. United Way began by evolving from what started as community chests has grown into a national organization. By 1920, that focused primarily funneling funding to charities through a payroll deduction system. So, like I said, this would be a very widespread organization that branches across communities. They would work together and funnel all of their charitable contributions and payroll deduction system, all of their funds and everything together to then be put towards making charitable contributions. So between 1919 and 1948, community chests increased from 39 to 1,000 overall, which is, that's incredible. Just be that, what is that, 30 years, they were able to more than 100 multiply, or more than 100 multiply the amount of community chests, which is just allows them to increase the amount of funding and overall charitable contributions that they're able to do. Today, there's over 1,300 local United Way ways in communities across the country. So that's physical locations where United Way has a place, a building in which they are conducting charitable organizations and charitable foundations and events in that community. The most locations being in New York with 43 locations. Now, that's not just in New York City, but that's predominantly New York City. There's also others surrounding the suburban environments of New York. And then of all the charitable payroll deductions in 1991, United Way accounted for 90% of them, which kind of gives you a scale or a sense of how large and how much of an impact United Way really had. Literally 90% of charitable payroll deductions. That's immense. All right, so now we're going to get into some of the facts and allegations that happened in this case. Problems with the structure of the United Way quickly began to hurt the company. Incentives through bonuses were offered if a company had 100% participation. So a lot of times these companies would get contributions based on the level of participation from everyone involved, and they would be given incentives to go above and beyond to achieve this 100% employee participation, which is impossible. No matter what company or where you're at, it's virtually impossible to obtain 100% employee participation. And they were seeing that on a very wide scale. From 1970 to 1990, receipts grew from $787 million to $3 billion. That's quite unprecedented growth, tripling the sales. While it is a 20-year time span, to be able to increase the outgoing cost by 3 times when you're already starting at 787 million is an extremely large growth. CEO William Aramoni began coming under fire and investigated for his business dealings and operations of United Way. William was the active CEO during this time, and it was later leaked to come out that William was taking home $463,000 per year as a salary, as well as was flying first class exclusively on commercial airlines and spent over $20,000 just on ground transportation. So that's limos, taxis, all of the above. Williams, not only did he have an extremely high salary, was also found to have created spin-off companies to purchase himself and his family members luxurious condominiums and apartments across the country. Just grossly mishandling of company funds, because it's quite evident with a $463,000 per year salary, he was doing all right himself. If he needed to pay for an additional apartment or purchase something for his family, then he had more than enough financial ability to do so on his own without the company. William also gave his girlfriend at the time $80,000 for consulting work that was a complete fabrication. So after financial audits, like this is far after the fact, they were able to find that they literally just had paid his girlfriend $80,000 for there was no tangible work to be shown as a result. Facts continued. After details about the Aramoni's expenses and salary became public, the active CEO for Goodyear and Tire and Rubber Company asked a question: where was the board? The outside auditors? Like these are the questions that many of the everyday common people would have been asking, especially as somebody who's a CEO in a predominant company in the industry at the time would have to go through similar hoops and tricks to be able to run the company himself. So like Goodyear and Tire, they have a board, outside auditors that they're always being held accountable for to make sure things like this don't happen. And to his point, what he was asking, where was that held of accountability? Where was United Way's version of that? Aramoni is forced to resign after 15 chapters of the United Way threatened to withhold their annual donations and contributions. So like as I said before, they had over 1,000 locations, like over 40 of them just in New York. They had 15 of those different charitable chapters or sections that make up the whole United Way as a company, would not give their donations and contributions over to the corporate company as a result of Aramoni's actions and the public exposure that was coming out as a result. Robert O. Bothwell, who was the executive director of the National Committee for Response Philanthropy, commented on the issue by saying, "I think it is obscene that he is making the kind of salary he's asking." I think it is obscene that he is making that kind of a salary and is asking people who make only $10,000 a year to give 5% of their income, which I think is a fantastic point. That he's going to be making over $463,000 per year, and then is going to not only take all that money, then mishandle company funds, and then turn around and ask people who are only making $10,000 a year to give 5% of that to their organization. I think that's extremely unethical. In August of 1992, United Way Board of Directors hired Aramoni's replacement, Elaine Chow, at a salary of $195,000 with no perks, which is still an extremely high salary. $195,000 is very well off, but it is a significant decrease from the $463,000 Aramoni was making before. Her first moves were to reduce the staff from 275 to 185. Borrow an additional $1.5 million to compensate for the loss of donations and contributions. I actually kind of agree with this, how she kind of made her entrance. while the press and the attention from Aramuni's situation had hurt the company and their brand awareness, um, so that could explain the loss of donations contributions. However, reducing the staff, I think, could be seen as bad, and she could gain resentment from the employees there. By 1995, United Way still unable to return to their 1991 level of 3.2 billion. So, like I was saying before, they clearly are hurt as a company from this ordeal. The mishandling of funds and leadership has left United Way with a bad reputation and a sour taste for the industry in the public's eyes, and make it very hard to recover. Faxing continued, and the resolution, or in part of the resolution. Ms. Chow has since left United Way and served as the Director of Peace Corps and as Secretary of Labor for the Bush administration from 2001 to 2009. Ms. Chow also happens to be married to one of the most well-known Republican senators, Mitch McConnell of Kentucky. He is also later served as the Secretary of Transportation under the Trump administration. So, as a result of her direct connections and her ability to do a good job on a large scale, Ms. Chow was able to excel way on past her time with United Way. In 1994, William Aramuni, along with two United Way executives, including the chief financial officer, were indicted by a federal grand jury for conspiracy, mail fraud, and tax fraud. The indictment alleged that the three officers manipulated more than $2.7 million in United Way funds to purchase a New York apartment for $383,000, interior decorator for $72,000, a condominium, vacations, travel expenses, American Airline lifetime pass, and more. I mean, him and his colleagues were bawling out and purchasing immensely expensive things when they were already making a killer living themselves. I mean, what need is there to go out and make all these crazy purchases under the company's dime when you're making $463,000 a year? Like, that baffles me. In 1995, Aramoni was found guilty of 25 counts of fraud, conspiracy, and money laundering. He was sentenced to 84 months in prison and fined $300,000. I think he should have been forced to pay much more of a fine. In 2000, a federal court judge awarded Aramuni the full value of his deferred compensation plan of $4.2 million that the judge ruled in his favor because there was no clause in the contract that would forfeit the money if he committed a felony. However, the judge also ruled that due to the situation, United Way could withhold $2 million of the amount to recover investigated cost and interest. So that was a way of trying to help United Way in the post Aramoni era, and from having to pay him $4 million. I mean, this whole ordeal has cost the company millions. Outside resource. This is pull up this video. Got it here. All right, so this is resuming. After you have watched the outside resource, unfortunately, due to a technical um, mishap, I didn't have the ability to play it and include it in the video. So there's the link there, and I'll just talk about the debrief after. So the popular television show Saturday Night Live made a skit showing a fake and humorous advertisement starring Peyton Manning by United Way to their customers. So it's shown from the perspective that United Way is partnering with the NFL to post an advertising to promote United Way. The video shows that United Way has lost the public's trust. It begins the video with Peyton Manning seemingly working with a bunch of kids. Obviously, he's then going to be teaching them the game of football, spending time with them, doing a normal corporate celebrity event. But then it is quickly shown that this is not the case when Peyton Manning begins to hit the kids in the face and hit them in the back and throw the ball at them extremely hard when they're just kids. They're not going to be able to catch that. And he then begins coaching them as if they were legitimate NFL players, getting on them for not catching the ball or making the running the play right. The skit's underlying theme is the whole situation that Peyton is in to help teach the kids the game of football and appears to be volunteering his time in order to do so. So the whole point is that it's this illusion that Peyton Manning is there to do good and he's there to volunteer his time and to spend all of this. But the whole point is that it's satire. We see Peyton having the opposite of how he would have how we would expect him to play, hitting the kids hard with the football, making rude comments, talking about financial incentives for him to be there, etc. This is just a great example of how SNL is playing on the fact or using the situation to make a joke about it, make it humorous, but it's not funny in the fact that this is similar to how a lot of the public view United Way after this Aramoni scandal and how they handled the situation. Ethical theory. I mean, it is clear from the case with United Way that leadership and executive positions at United Way were taken advantage of in a way that were abused their position for financial gain. So Aramoni, the chief financial officer, who are indicted on all those crimes, clearly used their position in an improper manner. The categorical imperative theory relates to this perfectly, and I think it fits exactly what they were doing. The categorical imperative theory is explained in the textbook as does not allow any resolution of an ethical dilemma in which human beings are used as a means by which others obtain benefits. So this is exactly the situation that they used to their benefit. They were playing on the ability for their actions to help other people and their charitable contributions from others to help other people, and they used those same funds that they were telling everybody that they were going to use to benefit to help people because it's a charity, and however they would use on things like buying luxurious apartments and giving his girlfriend $80,000. Um, Personal gain that clearly is being used for their personal benefit. The leadership of United Way used their power and position with the access of large quantities of funds for personal gain in the opposite to the goal of United Way, which is a charitable organization. So just complete opposite ends of the spectrum there. The textbook gives another great look into how someone like this would think by asking this question. If you were hit by, if you hit a car in the parking lot and damaged it, but you could be guaranteed that no one else saw you do it, would you leave a note on the other person's car with the contact information? If you answered no, if you answered no, because that's happened to me 12 times before and no one left me a note, then you are unhappy with the universal behaviors that are unwilling to commit to a universal standard of honesty and disclosure to remedy those behaviors. So, what that is saying is that rather than being bitter the fact that that's happened to you before, that doesn't make the situation, two wrongs don't make a right. In order for them to properly take care of their family in their view, they didn't have to steal money from a charitable organization that they were helping to run. It is clear that Aramoni and others did not have the best interests of the individuals they were supposed to be helping when they were doing this. Ethical theory 2. Ethical egoism. We act as we do and decide to behave as we do because we have determined that it is our own self-interest, which just brings back it again. I mean, they clearly were acting on their own um, self-interest, trying to support themselves financially, trying to support their family financially, trying to support themselves by having multiple locations to live at, luxurious decorations, vacations around the country. Um, I mean, they were taking these funds that were supposed to be meant to be used to help those people in need, and instead they're using it on all these things. I mean, so it's very much clear cut ethical egoism. Behind closed doors, the opposite was happening: stealing, manipulating, and preservation of oneself and those close to him. Yeah. I mean, ethical theory 3: moral relativists. Believing in time and place ethics. This is best described as a decision that you wouldn't think is moral or ethical. Given the situation, then the moral or ethical decision changes. So I think the book gives a great analogy on the best way to think about this theory is let's say you live in a neighborhood
in which drug dealers are operating a crystal meth lab or a crack house. Committing arson to drive away the drug dealers is ethically justified. So you're making the decision to try and get rid of those drug dealers to try and benefit the community and the neighborhood. However, burning down somebody's house is not ethical or morally justified, but they justify it based on the fact that they're not good for the community. Or if you are a parent and your child is starving, stealing a loaf of bread is ethically correct. While your child is hungry and he needs to eat, stealing isn't the proper way to do so. Um, in this case, I think the theory is evident because Aramoni and others made the decision that they did uh, because they felt that they were owed what was fair to them to receive. They think that I'm so sorry. They would think this because they were leading and in charge of one of the largest charitable organizations in the United States, reaching a height of $3.2 billion as a company. And that earlier statistic that we saw, of over 90% of charitable organizations funneled through United Way. So that, I mean, they had an enormous control and impact in the charitable organization industry, um, which makes it that much more shocking. From their perspective, they might view the issue because they help to do a lot of good and help to grow the company to the size that it is. Like from Armoni's perspective, he may think that he is justified in the fact of taking $400,000 a year for a salary, buying an apartment, and all these extreme cases. He might view that as he is owed that because he has taken the company to the next level and allowed them to do so much good. As well as when you're a president of a company like that and your entire mission every single day is surrounded about doing charitable organizations, I think it's also easy to become narcissistic over a period of time. That like your way is the best way because you're a good person, because you have a height of $3.2 billion and you're one of the largest charitable organizations in the United States. So who's to tell you that you can't do that? I mean, clearly it's wrong. I'm not advising for it. I'm just explaining the mentality and the uh, thought process that he might have had. Resolutions. United Way has been hurt severely as a result of this case. Their brand and image has taken severe hits as well as their financial situation. In order to rebuild trust and accountability for the brand, the public eye would need serious checks and balances to need to be implemented. The first being transparency. United Way would claim responsibility for the situation, then would implement quarterly audits of the company's finances overall that would focus primarily on executive leadership and how they are handling funds. This would be essentially the biggest thing that they could do to try and stop um, Armoni from happening again, just in the future, or from another member of their team trying to steal and mishandle charitable funds. A new department for the United Way could be created to fill this program and this position and call it United Transparency Program, or the UTP for short. I just came up with this. I was thinking about it. This could be also capitalized on and implemented into the marketing campaign to try to re-establish their brand and public eye. That they were one of the most predominant uh, charities and would help so many people, but now they have SNL making skits about how they're not actually good people. Like they need to get back on the right side of things. Resolution 2. Another resolution that United Way should implement is the partnership with the law, meeting with them to partner with the newly created UTP, as we just discussed, to deter others from potentially doing the same thing. So essentially creating a program to whistleblow on their own individuals to the law to try to hold everybody accountable and to make sure that the funds are actually going where they should be going and are actually going to support people. United Way would directly partner or hold persons accountable for their actions to the full extent of the law and won't be covered up for the fear of hurting the brand. This would also help to support the United Way Transparency Initiative. I think this would be the best way that they could go about trying to regain and rebuild that trust with customers. Company policy should also be changed to include no financial or benefits for companies with 100% participation in charitable events and activities. Leadership and United Way would put benchmark incentives for the team members and customers to hit um, and receive additional benefits. This process is easily corruptible and can be used by individuals for personal gain to inflate charitable donations, personal ability, etc. A different approach to this issue would be taken if policy were to be introduced that would earn individuals points based on their work. So, okay, if you did achieve a high participation or 100% participation, you would earn points for that. The points they would earn would then be totaled for their department or section that they worked on. So, say you were one of those charitable organizations in New York. The things that you and your team does in New York would earn you and your team in New York points. These points would then be added up to create a friendly competition amongst in the workplace, amongst all of the various locations that United Way has. And at the end of each quarter, the team with the most points would get prizes and awareness from the company executives as a team rather than the individual. So rather than praising the individual and giving financial gains to specific incentives, you're supporting and uplifting an entire team of people, and you're supporting and uplifting the team mentality rather than individuals trying to outperform each other. They're going to be trying to work together to beat the other people or beat the other chapters. Overview. I think United Way lacks serious top-down leadership foundation and the approach to control and police their own organization. I think this kind of happened naturally in the process of trying to grow and create a company for positive cultural gains. You know, trying to help people, and I think there's part of a human want to not believe that people in that situation who are helping people wouldn't want to help themselves. But clearly, we can see that despite somebody being um, in a position of power in a company that's entirely focused on charitable organizations, would still be able to tear down that trust and help themselves ultimately first. United Way also did not take the appropriate steps to rebuild, acknowledge, and make right on their mistakes. I feel as though, from the research that I've done and reading this case, that they really did not address the issue at all. They more or less tried to cover up the issue and act like basically trying to get back to business as normal. And I don't think that's the appropriate response. And we can see that given that their annual charitable contributions were down and still have never seen to go back to that, to where they were in 1991. Conclusion, then discussion questions. So, do you think Aramuni regrets what he did? Do you think the legal verdict was sufficient for him and his crimes? And do you think United Way did a good job of handling the situation? Thank you again.